A very good evening to our viewers. Thank you for joining us tonight on the agenda. My name is Ndala. Tonight on the platform we are joined by Duminga Ndala. She is a youth leader within the Landless People's Movement, as well as Simon Amunime. He is a young member of the ruling party SWAPO, and we are here tonight to discuss the issue of free university education that the President, Netumana Ndaitwa, announced during her State of the Nation address on the 24th of April, and which seems to have caught a lot of people off guard, including universities that must avail that free education. Thank you very much, Simon, for coming through. It's been a long time. So thank you for joining us.
No, thank you very much, Toivo, for having me. Greetings to the viewers. I'm actually jealous. You guys have kept me to the north. See how dark I am now. Like the I was like, hey, when I was here.
Yeah. Duminga, welcome to the platform.
Thank you so much, Toys. It's always a pleasure being here, and it's good to see Simon Amunime. It's been a while.
Yeah, yes. Wonderful. We'll start with you.
Yes.
When the President made that announcement on the 24th of April, what was your sort of first, how did you internalize the news?
Well, from our side, we thought it was a very commendable and transformative decision that she pronounced that from 2026 we will be having free tertiary education. I think this is one of the things as a youth wing that we have always been fighting for. During our student years, I think Amunime will also attest to that, that would protest that it's important that each and every Namibian child goes to school, and that finances should not be a barrier for them to access education. And we also thought that it's a very commendable step in terms of achieving inclusive education. I think regardless of whatever background you come from, political background or whether ethnicity or financial background, it should be our prerogative to see to it that each and every Namibian child is educated. I think our constitution also guarantees that in Article 25 that each and every person should have the right to education. So in our sense, we thought that, okay, the president is now starting to become a socialist. She's speaking to whatever we have been advocating for. She's speaking to the aspiration of every Namibian child. Yeah. But in that, we thought, how is that going to be achieved? It's very important that whatever pronouncement it's made, it should be coupled with a class agenda. How are we going to sustain the financing of free education in our lifetime is very important. How are we going to go about it to ensure that come January 2026, all universities are given the necessary finances to run their operations? I think a lot of people don't know that, but majority of the universities actually depend on the finances from private students.
Yeah.
Yes, and that finances goes through operations, it goes through the research department of universities, and this is why you would see that a lot of our local universities are not engaged in research development because they are not given the necessary funding from government. Even in terms of subsidies, it's not sufficient, and this is why our research component in university is very lacking. So our question is, how are we going to go about it to achieve it? How are we going to sustain it? And what is the model of the program that is going to ensure that indeed that free education is going to be smooth and it's going to be realized in our lifetime?
Yeah. Simon, the issue here is that I think there's a general consensus that free education is a good thing. But to many of us, including myself, I don't hide my position on things like this, is that it sounds like an impulsive decision. It sounds like a populist decision by a political party that has its back against the wall and it's trying to appease the voter base that it has lost. And it comes up with these abruptive decisions. 2026 is in 7 months' time. The universities are hearing about this thing for the first time on the 24th, like the rest of the country. How do you prepare? There's no policy whatsoever to guide this process. Your thoughts?
Yeah, no, thank you, Toivo. I think it's very important as a point of departure to give historical context. Yeah. Coming from a background of student activism, I remember, yes, in Nanso. I think from the 2015 there when the likes of Sharonis Bush, Timothée Sangala were at the helm. And also the time of Abraham Yambo, where we had a very important slogan where we are saying failure to deliver on the education promise can never be an option. Now, the militant and radical student activists in 2015 took over the helm of Nanso. That was the likes of Velem, Dembulkeni Noyoma, Kavetu, Herman. And there was a very important resolution they took that was called Resolution 16. Now, Resolution 16 speaks to that. We must abolish registration fee, we must scrap student debts, and we must turn loans into grant as a roadmap to free tertiary education. That was the stance of students. And I remember when we got in, we were agitating and waging that struggle on behalf of students, even leading to a point where some of us had to quit Nanso because the leadership that took over then zigzagged. That was the agenda that the young people were agitating for. And I remember it was so heated up that even the likes of Nanso was suspended as an NYC affiliate. UNAM had to take us to court. We staged for the first time something that was called the varsity lockdown, where we locked down the Namibian University of Science and Technology in demand of free tertiary education. Because those demands were saying scrap registration fees so people can have access, write off all student debts, as well as turn loans into grant. And it was granted that particular way when Prof. Chama Chiviko was still VC there. At UNAM, it was not so successful because they went to get a court interdict, where to get other guys like Adela to represent us. Now, later on, there was a new leadership. They even had to divert, that we even had to go and form another student body called SAN, the Student Union of Namibia. I remember taking the likes of Ina Ngari them to meet other student leaders in South Africa from the EFF for us to form SAN as an alternative towards that agenda. We are speaking now in the language of SAN to say that we must have free, quality, and decolonized and decentralized education. That universities must not just be in the capital city, they must be in the region. They must be subsided and they must be of quality and decentralized. And we're very happy because you see now NAS is in the village, even private sector, IUM, they're building Nokahawa and Nana. So we're very happy that was attained. Now, fast forward, it's just to say that the fight for free tertiary education can no longer be postponed. And when we speak about in terms of the position of the party, SWAPO party, that is in accordance with the SWAPO party implementation plan. I think it's on page 52, where we are speaking is that as part of youth empowerment, we must deliver free tertiary education to our people. And this is completely not new to even. I don't know why people are so agitated. It's just a bit shift in terms of the formula and model. If you look now the current status when you speak about NASFAF, NASFAF in the last financial year received over 2 billion. That is a subsidy from government. UNAM received over 1 billion. NAS received over 550 million. So if you look at those figures, we are already delivering this free to students. Because if you go, you get tuition fee and even non-tuition fee for free. It's not just about free website. So what is currently happening with the new pronouncement is to say, since registration fees always a stumbling block for people to pay 5,000 at the beginning of the script, so everyone can have access, especially at public institution. Now, to even what we are saying, and Duminga just attests, we're protesting year in, year out when NASFAF became a parastatal, because first NASFAF was part of the ministry. So these guys usually have a lot of corners that you have to go through. Now, imagine if government have to give already 2 billion to NASFAF. You have to give to NAS. You have to give to. But also NASFAF had a way of delaying students' payment because they contract, first it was NAMIC, money goes through NAMIC, then from NAMIC to NASFAF, then maybe bank window. So what we are saying now is that UNAM register, say we have 5,000 registered students. Send your invoice, the money sent, the government send the money directly to UNAM.
Yeah.
NAS, how many students do we have? No, we registered 200 students. The invoice, we send the money. Why do we need all this middle entity that just end up getting tenders and distributing student money that were intended for students?
But that is exactly the issue, Simon. The thing is, the whole thing doesn't seem organized. It sounds as political as it can be, because NASFAF is still there as an intermediary. Because you would think that, okay, if universities will just be paid directly by the government, why don't someone in Treasury just press a button, then the money goes to the account of NAST or UNAM or whatever. But mind you, there's also private universities.
Yes.
Because if you are at a triumphant college, or that controversial college there in Oshikango that is always in the news, you are still a Namibian student. So we can't, but that is why I want to bring back Duminga on this, to say that because if SWAPO says free education, free university education is part of the plan, let's start with just free education that we have right now, primary and secondary. It's a mess. It's a mess. And I thought someone would want to straighten that out first before then they move to the next level. Because if this was a guinea pig, if this was a test of free education, it has failed. So university free education will be based on what when this one has not passed?
Yeah, of course, I think that's a very important issue that you have just raised. We can all agree that the free education at primary and secondary level has been a mess. One, because it has been done haphazardly. We were thinking that we're going to go for a holistic approach of implementing free education from primary to secondary education. Why? Because firstly, we need to put the necessary policies and strategies in place. Firstly, during our engagement with teachers, you would know that most of the teachers that were in the old system were actually not trained to adapt to the new curriculum that was adopted. And the new curriculum came with the issue of free education at primary and secondary level too. 3, we do not have the necessary facilities to aid the learning process. And this is why we are in this mess. And this is why every year we come on your show to speak as to why UNAM is refusing to admit learners that have exited school at grade 11 level. And this is because there was no perhaps thorough consultation from all stakeholders within the education fraternity. 1. 2, it's because there was no holistic approach in order to implement this free education at primary and secondary level. And in fact, a lot of parents actually complain that it's actually not free in its totality, because parents are actually subjected to pay or contribute towards school development fund, or they are also...
Let me just interrupt you there,
yes.
Duminga. Because when you say it's not entirely free, it's not even, that is actually an understatement. The cost of free education has been shifted to the parents. I can tell you that.
Yes.
As a parent myself. Because you get a list in November or December there, end of the year, from schools saying, bring these things.
Correct.
And the schools sneak in their own items there, because the notebooks is for my son and all these things is okay. Then they say this rotatrim papers, this papers. Correct. And all this, those are for the school itself, because they know that if we do not siphon this from the parents, government will not come to the party.
Exactly.
So the costs have been literally
shifted to the parents. And this is why a lot of parents are complaining that it's actually not free in its totality.
It's more expensive now.
Because now they pay more compared to what they would normally pay when it was not free. Yes. So this is why I said it's important that we define terms, and it's also important that whatever pronouncement that we make in the public domain, that there's a policy to back up, or there's a class agenda as to how we are going to go about it, for how long. And in fact, the president has not pronounced herself to say that free, who is it going to go to? Is it going to be for your first degree, or is it from your first degree until PhD level, or who exactly is going to be free? Is it going to be free to local students or international students? Because today I was reading that in Poland, free education also applies to international students. If you go study in Poland and you're not from Poland, you can go study there for free. So there's not been proper pronouncement in that regard. And of course, Honorable Steenkamp has said that it's going to apply to private universities as well, which is something that we also appreciate, because first we thought there was going to be discrimination in terms of implementing free education, that it only applies to public universities and not private universities. But now we are told it applies to both. But I think it's very important that we put up the necessary policies, the necessary steps before we totally implement this. I think it's a very commendable step, but we do not want to find ourselves next year where UNAM is again going to say that no, we were not consulted enough, and that this learners or students, rather, they should pay their tuition fee, or they should pay registration fees.
Simon, you want to...
Yes. No, of course, leadership is always about taking responsibility. Of course, from the government of the day one, there have been shortcomings in terms of the implementation of free education. It's not an easy process. And once the president says that it's not business as usual, she means what she says. That's why you have seen even in terms of the reintegration of certain ministries in portfolio. Of course, there has been a very big gap between the basic education and higher education. That's why it's got combined so that we have coherence and they are speaking to each other, be in terms of curriculum, be in terms of funding and so we don't experience some of those problems. But once we speak in terms of free tertiary education, particularly that you mentioned in terms of private universities, no, of course, government can subsidize public universities, but can't subsidize private university, but they can fund students that are studying at private university. And even before NASFAF became a parastatal, that had been happening. So a lot of people are going out saying it's discrimination. When citizens or public pay tax, there's no discrimination whether you're from private or public. But of course, government can't dictate, for example, for IUM and say, abolish registration fee. Because UNAM gets over $1 billion, NAS gets over 500 million, they can survive on that without registration fee. But if you impose that on Welwitschia, Transfer College, how are they going to deal with their expenses? But what government can do can pay tuition fees for students that are studying a private entity. And if you read properly, the president just gave a policy direction. So the duty and the prerogative of the head of state can give policy direction in terms of what must happen. But it's clearly even stated by the line minister that there will be a funding model developed even for private institutions in terms of making an exploration in terms of the funding modalities that will be focused in terms of how we can fund this private institution as well as government. There will be a series...
But isn't that what you do first, Simon? This is exactly my problem. My problem is, that's why I'm calling it impulsive, because I'm saying you straighten out these things first. The funding modalities, the policies that are going to guide these things, the question that she raised to say, okay, is it only for your first degree, or can postgraduate students also be funded for free and whatnot? Those things are not clear. So I thought the natural order of things would have been to say, we have a huge conference or whatever, a multi-stakeholder conference, we come up with the formulas, with the policies, and with everything, and then we say, we are now ready. Universities, you are now ordered to go and offer free education in that sense. Not, of course, there's funding to come from government. These things, we are saying, in 7 months' time, universities must start scraping registration fees. They must not ask a cent, not one red penny from any student, while we are working out seemingly the solutions.
No, but guys, realistically, the president can give a policy direction in terms of what must happen. Listen.
That is correct.
But it should be informed by research.
That's what I'm saying. That is not, maybe the president did not just wake up and go to sauna. That's why sometimes I start to get confused, because especially members from opposition and media houses, during the campaigns, they were all going and saying, no, the SWAPO manifesto, they were not even reading the content inside what it entails. Yeah. This is not something new. These were documents and the promises that were made, and they were very, very articulated in our manifesto. So the president is speaking to the manifesto of the SWAPO party. And once she does that, she gives policy direction. In terms of implementation, as I'm saying, there's a series of consultations that are going to happen. But as a leader...
Simon, when?
You start, of course, Toivo.
My brother, when will this happen?
Yeah, that's why I'm explaining to Toivo.
January is a stone throw away.
But Toivo, even your argument for me does not hold water. Because if you are saying, how is it going to happen? But currently, even over 47,000 students that are funded by NASA, 47,000 students, there were some years that we allowed for them to register without registration fee. What you do, you just provide your acknowledgement letter from NASFAF. Yes. That was the direction. You register, you meet the requirements, you have an admission letter, you give an acknowledgement letter, then you're allowed to register. It was not difficult. So it's not something that was never done, or is something that is sophisticated. I think they are just agitated, and also people are trying to hijack this for populism and stuff like that. But I think we have a very much competent cabinet that is comprised of people that were part of this struggle. Even if you are speaking about the young Emma, we're leading with them. The wise Emmanuel are coming from NASFAF, the Liangula, the Natango Itete. We have a much competent team that is going to make sure that the modalities we are going to put in place are going to be smooth and everyone is going to benefit. I don't think really people should be worried. And with a private institution, they should prepare themselves in terms of the submission that they are going to make. Because instead of being antagonistic to something and saying, no, it's discrimination, prepare yourself in terms of how will this funding affect us, how should it be channeled and stuffs around like that.
You can't,
I think
you don't know how. But in the absence of all these things, they are just shooting in the darkness. Because you really, as a university,
yes,
and I'll give you the chance now.
For a university.
Yeah, you do. And as a private university in particular,
yeah,
you want to prepare yourself ahead of this new regime of things. But you don't know where to start because there's just no clarity. If the president was saying free education will happen, free university education will happen during my term of office, if you say that, I will be the first to climb on the mountain top and say, bravo, Ms. President. But when you say it must happen now in January, my brother, no policy framework, nothing is clear.
Modality.
No.
But Toivo,
that is madness.
But the president even made it clear to say it's going to happen in phases. I think you guys are just, so people are working.
No, she said, in her speech, she said it's going to happen in phases. But good. She then says, come January 2026,
yes,
it will be implemented.
First
so what
phase.
does that mean?
It means the first phase.
Which is, what does that entail?
Free registration.
Free registration.
Yes. Which I don't see there is any difficulty to deliver free registration.
Of course
if you are
not.
saying, I'm subsiding UNAM this amount of money, and I'm subsiding NAS this amount of money, and we must also not forget TVETs, VTCs, those are now public entities, this amount of money. Students must register, for example, with their acknowledgement letter. It's free registration fee, so everyone has access to enter university. I don't see what should be the concern around
Choice,
that.
I think what Simon is missing is usually what happens during registration is this. Students that were being funded by NASFAF is they register with the acknowledgement letter that we all agree to. But there were those that would fund their own studies, and the money that they would pay as registration fees would be then used to run the operations of the university.
Yes.
But now next year, it's not going to happen because they will then have to wait on treasury. So it means the university will sort of be on a standhold until February or March, when it's the financial year ends, when the treasury pays. So between January and March, how are we going to pay the lecturers? There's no funding modality to that effect. There's no policy to that effect. There's no strategy to that effect. How are we going to run the operations, pay electricity and water? Was that pronounced in her speech? Definitely not. And this is why we are saying that those are some of the worries that we have. Yes, we do acknowledge that that is a commendable approach. And it's actually very bold for her as a woman to come up with such an initiative. But how do we then run the university from January until March? Mind you, there is a lot of student backlog in terms of debt. UNAM have been complaining that NASFAF does not even pay on time. And this is why some of the lecturers are complaining, especially at the University of Namibia, that for the past 3 years, they have not received any salary increment. And they are actually worried that with the implementation of free education, there won't be any salary increment. And why? This is going to cause our lecturers to actually exit the public universities and go to private universities or abroad where they are appreciated in terms of their performance. So those are some of the things, those are some of the worries that we actually have as stakeholders in the education fraternity.
You see, Duminga, I think you guys are exaggerating this matter. I don't think we can expect a president of the country to deal with the nitty-gritties in terms of...
Of course not, but there should be a policy that informs a pronouncement.
That's what I'm explaining to you to say. As a head of state, she has the prerogative to give policy direction and make pronouncement. That's why she has a cabinet. There are technocrats. A government is run by bureaucrats. You have EDs, you have various stakeholders. You have the NQA, you have the National Council of Higher Education. So it's not the president now to say, no, the lecturers must be paid by this time. Students, she can make a pronouncement. Then these responsible people that are appointed and given the responsibility to action are the guys that are now developing the modality in terms of how that free tertiary education is going to be delivered. When does the financial year end?
March.
Yes. So why are you worried? If money is allocated now, we are saying it will not reach much next year.
The 24 billion that was tabled by the Minister of Education, does it speak to the implementation?
That's what I'm saying.
To the implementation of free education?
Definitely, it's incorporated into that. So I don't think there is anything really to be worried about if you are saying registration fee, money will be allocated, because the financial year is going to end March next year. When does registration happen? It's before that.
Yeah.
Yes. So there's no worry in terms of no lecturers that are going to get paid, and in terms of students that are going to register and money stuffs around like that. So of course there will be challenges. When there's something new, it brings good things, but it also brings along challenges. But we must never miss the magnanimity of collaboration and complementary. That's why it's very important when you bring a policy like this. It's not the SWAPO policy, it's a national policy. You need progressive parties like LPN to come as part of consultation to say, this is the better way we can do it. You have a student body that can come. We have all these important stakeholders that come and say, so there's no one that is some sort of monopoly of wisdom or solution to this matter. The president is pulling everyone along, and who's going to benefit is the whole nation. So we are calling everyone to join the party in terms of how do we discuss around the table to make sure that the modalities that we are going to put in place, the funding formulas, are going to be in the best interest of everyone. No one is discriminated, and we are going to have a smooth process. I think that is okay. the posture of the president.
Okay, we go for a very short break, and then I return with Duminga Ndala and Simon Amunime. The agenda continues with two youth activists, especially in the space of education. You see, Simon, when you say the president's pronouncements are policy directives, for me as a citizen, it must be, those directives must be realistic, first and foremost. But secondly, they must also be, I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
We have on the front page of Namibian Sun on Friday that says that 235 million has been allocated towards the construction of 13 stadiums. And so it's a policy directive. The president says, I want 13 soccer stadiums to be started this year. All of them must be started because it's in the sun in black and white. It says the construction will start this year. Of course, they can be finished later, but the construction must start this year. But when you give 235 million, when the refurbishment of Independence Stadium alone requires 2 billion, and you are talking about apparently 7 soccer stadiums the size of Independence Stadium, it's a joke. So we can't talk about just directives. Directives, you don't put people under pressure like that. Go and build me 13 stadiums, here's 235 million. How do I, it's not even enough to fix Sam Newman Stadium in Katutura. So those are the things that I have a problem with, to say that even this directive, make education at your universities free, see how you're going to deal with it. That is essentially what it says. Again, for me, it's a question of timelines. If you're saying, okay, we have until 2027, we have a year between now and 2027 to come up with the funding models, What are we going to do with NASFAF? What policy are we going to come up with that universities must follow? How will the private universities fit into this new regime? Then within 12 months, I need a solution. Then technocrats and your bureaucrats and policymakers and everybody come together and come up with a one-fits-all sort of solution. But when you just make it in Parliament in April, and you say by the beginning of the academic, you're talking about phases. I understand that.
Very good.
But even that, to scrap, because scrapping universities registration fee, which is part of the first phase,
yes.
It's not just a walk in the park. Universities need to prepare to say, okay, there will be a funding gap now. What do we do between now and February to make sure that we still run the university operations and whatnot? But there's no time for that.
No, I don't know when you mean there's no time for that, Toivo. The president was sworn in only in March.
Yes.
Then it's April. She's leading her new administration. So Namibia is already faced with the problem of saying we are good at making policy, but we don't implement. That's why you still complain about Vision 2030 there. So there's no time just to be making and no implementation. Let's try. If we have to fail, let's try and implement. I think that is the posture that the current administration is taking. You are saying in terms of even the stadiums, money is allocated, see what you can do with that. But as leaders, as people...
Nothing you can do with that.
That's what I'm saying, Toivo. As leaders and people at the helm of institution, you just don't limit yourself to budgetary provision that you get from the state. Do you understand? You can also seek funding elsewhere. If you are saying there's a shortfall in this specific funding, you find, for example, you fund parastatal that are funding maybe golf, people to go play golf for 800,000, or they are funding some as part of their corporate social responsibility. So as long as there's a concerted effort and we have a multifaceted approach to things, we can always bring our resources together and implement. For me, it's good to start than being late and never.
I
But
agree.
in terms of Toivo, for me, universities, I don't think really why we are so worried, because what's so difficult in terms of just saying, if you apply, there's a process. NASFAF is reintegrated back into the ministry. That's when I did my first degree, that's what used to happen. You go to the headquarters of the ministry, with your application, you have an admission letter, you are given a letter to say that you qualify for funding. You take it to the institution, you register. In terms of subsidy, government already gave this money, and they'll just add in terms of tuition. I don't really see the crisis, but if we are worried about time, we're in May now, we still have a few months to go. So how long does consultation take? If you are saying, let's call all these guys and give them 3 months, it's more than enough for 4 months. All these important stakeholders can come, then we can come up with a workable document. And as I said, it's going to be in phases. If you are saying, okay, by next year, 2026, February, this is what is going to happen.
Okay.
2027, this is what is going to happen. I think the term is just 5 years.
Yes.
You're saying if it's maybe, now if you just make promises only in 2028 or 2029, then you say she lied during the Swapo Party manifesto.
No, but Simon, the essence of terms is not to say that you must accomplish everything. It's to implement.
Yes.
Right? Then leave things implemented, leave things running. If you don't get re-elected, the next person carries on. It's not to say that now suddenly all the solutions must be found. It's not possible. But let me go back to Duminga. Mm-hmm. During the State of the Nation address, your president, your party president, Mr. Swatboy, said word for word that the president was all over the place.
Correct.
He said she's making many promises and allocating scrums to each of these promises. And he thinks that, he cited, for example, the example of 700 million allocated to the formalization of informal settlement. And he says, just quantity surveyors or whatever, just basics, that money is gone already. An exercise like that requires a lot of money. We have the Commerce Regional Governor, Mr. Nuyoma, who says he is going to construct 5,000 houses in Commerce within the next 12 months. By April next year, there will be 5,000 new houses in Windhoek constructed. And I told my team at Namibian Sun, go back to the governor and maybe it was a heat of the moment comment. Maybe he can now readjust the figures. He comes back and says, no, we are going to build 5,000 houses in Commerce. The total of houses built last year by government nationwide, 1,500 according to the State of the Nation address numbers by the president. So this is for me what worries me. But to say to come back now to you, Duminga. Last year around this time there was a think tank, an international think tank, Fitch, something, which wrote an analysis of elections ahead of our elections in November, and they said, if SWAPO doesn't win this election convincingly, you are going to see a flurry of silly announcements meant to appease the people, some populist things that are going to be thrown around in order to win back the people. And I seem to see now that this view is being vindicated, because 13 stadiums within 5 years, 5,000 houses in Vindu, free varsity education, things that are not even, there's no ground for some of these things. Your thoughts, please.
Well, I think this government is over-promising the Namibian people. I think they are very serious in terms of they want to deliver services, but to what cost? And I would like to echo the same words that my party president said, that they are all over. And it's very important that you just don't throw numbers around, but rather take at least 3 or 4 sectors of the economy that you want to walk into so that the people feel the impact. I think the comment by the Commerce governor is actually laughable. Firstly, the governor has no budget. I don't think he realized that. So with what budget is he going to construct those 5,000 houses? Perhaps through collaborations he can do that, but it's just not realistic. It's just not realistic. You would know that we have a backlog, a housing backlog of 250,000 houses or 500,000, and those are this is the same pronouncement that was done by the late President Hage Geingob, and it was not realized. And we hope that with their promises, it needs to speak to the realities and the material conditions of our people. If you are going to say you are going to construct 5,000 houses, it should be realistic in its implementation. It should be realistic in its articulation. You can't just be mentioning numbers and you do not have a policy position, or you do not have a modality on how you are going to construct those houses. Equally so with the free tertiary education. It's important that education is one of the most important sector of any country's economy, and we cannot afford to fail our Namibian people by destroying our education system in this country. And apart from the financial aspect of it, we also need to look as to, is our public universities ready to carry the burden of influx of registration among students? Because now the financial barrier is no more there. Can they withstand the pressure? Because of course we are going to see an increase in terms of enrollment of the students. Can our public university withstand that pressure? Our facilities at the public universities, are they able to withstand that pressure in terms of research and so forth? So these are some of the things that we need to look at. This is why we need a holistic approach to it. Perhaps with the implementation of free education, we should also build new public universities in order for the pressure and the burden to be less on the already existing institutions of higher learning.
Yeah. So, yeah, please.
Yes, Toivo.
Go ahead. Yes.
Yeah, it's actually very interesting to hear about that. That it's just promises and throwing numbers over. Yeah. We must understand, and Duminga is mentioning that the governor has no budget. The governor is the representative of the president in the region. The governor is the political head in a particular region that is there to oversee the development, the implementation.
There's no budget.
And no, he does not need a budget. You must understand in terms of the modus operandi of our state. You have central government, you have regional council, and local authority.
Correct.
So in Commerce, you have the city of Windhoek. You have the regional council that deals with the 12 constituencies. So funding is available through the regional council as well as the local authority. And you must also understand there are other supporting collaborative institutions such as the NAG, for example, National Housing Enterprise. So it's not just a governor baby to sit there, but it's his duty to facilitate and make sure all these stakeholders come together and we have financing to do that. So it's not an overpraising of 5,000 houses. I really think the current administration
let
is
me
serious.
ask you this, Simon.
Yeah, I think the 5,000 are going to be
Let me
delivered.
ask
Really, I believe.
Let me ask you this, Simon.
Yes.
Do you, as a very wise man that you are, educated man that you are, who has seen our country going through so many things, do you think, I will just give you, forget 5,000 for a minute. Yeah. Do you think there will be even 2,000 new houses in this commerce region by April next year? Do you seriously believe that will happen?
By April next year? It's
12 months, because the pronouncement was made in April, so by April next year it's 12 months.
Anything is possible.
I think Amunime is avoiding the fact that we have a culture of red tape and bureaucracy in our country.
Yes.
Now, if a local authority like City of Windhoek wants to construct houses and so forth, they need to get approval from the Line Ministry, which is the Minister of Urban and Rural Development.
Yes.
Now, this specific minister, or if we have to speak with the erstwhile minister, Erastus Utoni, he was sitting with a bunch of applications from various local authorities around the country. Yeah. And our councillors, particularly in those councils that we govern, we had to pressurize him even at parliament level. And this minister was not pushing or was not pushing anything, or was not even raising to the call. So the same question is, do you think that minister will be able to do that? It's the type of people that we have in this position. So there's a lot of bureaucratic processes that one needs to follow, because councillors are actually not really given that political will to push for things that they want to bring about within their different localities. So it's a very tedious process, and of course it needs leaders that have the political will to bring about service delivery.
Yeah, not definitely, Toivo. As I was saying, the cabinet is trimmed now, it's very small. We have a lot of competent and progressive. Even the technocrats were reshuffled. She's speaking in terms of bureaucracy. Yeah. Because if this could sit on these things, some people had vested interest. You can see mass housing and many houses are not occupied. Yeah. So some of the things are deliberate and intentional by people that are part of the system that delay some of this process to happen. But the political will is there. But
if you say it
yes,
in commerce, if the SWAPO party government delivers 5,000 houses during the duration in commerce. Yeah. During the duration of Memenetumbo, me as a commerce resident, I swear I don't know what I'll be doing, because I would die from excitement. But that is just within 5 years. Yes. Because it's such a massive radical departure from what we've gotten used. Mass housing delivered 4,800 houses in 10 years, nationally. And you want to tell me that in commerce alone, within a year, you can surpass what mass housing could deliver in 10 years? It's not possible.
Let's give the governor.
So let me just put this to you as a SWAPO member, Simon. The danger with overpromising is that when people are going to calculate by how much you have failed to deliver what you have promised. So if you say, for example, that you are going to deliver 5,000 houses within 12 months, and then you end up building miraculously 700, even that would be a miracle. That would be already a failure, because you have set the bar too high. But if you are measured in your promises to say, okay, we are going to deliver 1,000 houses in Windhoek, and then you deliver 600, people can say, no, you've actually pushed. But now the gap between delivery and what has not been delivered will be too bad. And people are going to say, oh, isn't this SWAPO that delivered only 20% and failed by 80%? The party is setting itself up for failure. That is my...
Toivo,
yes.
What I can say, so we can conclude on this one. Yeah. We continue with the education. Yeah. The party have set the target, and that's the target of the party. They've done research, and they've assessed and see if they are able to do it. Yeah. That is the target that have been set, and we must just accept it and judge when we get there. Let's give the governor, he's a youthful governor.
The target should be from an informed perspective.
Of course, When we drafted them
we have
in
a
the
backlog of
manifesto,
500,000 in the country. How?
Of course, it's from an informed position, a team of expertise,
It's not
technocrats. No, because
they are,
that's what
they
I'm
are
saying.
turning out to be a
No,
populist
Simon,
government.
come
They
on.
just make pronouncements to appease the populace.
That's according to your own posture.
That
Let's
can be
wait
from,
for the horses to return.
Scientifically,
Yes.
it cannot
No,
be
it's
from,
okay, Toivo.
yeah.
Let's give the governor the benefit of the doubt. He's there. When the time comes, you can call us back here and say, you guys have failed. But the target has been set.
We will be on their toes. We are going to hold them accountable.
Yes, call me back.
Yeah.
Because you see, as we really don't have a problem, because criticism is a prerequisite for greatness. People must talk, and it shows that our democracy is working.
Of course.
People must critique, they must give view, and it speaks to our democracy. So give the governor the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
Not only that, but let's also be supportive. If you take, for example, here's one of the most difficult regions. You take, for example, the city of Windhoek. No one is absolute majority. You have to work with councillors from different political parties.
Yes.
But if you do it deliberately and say, as we are going to council to make sure that things don't get approved for houses to be built, so that can also be a stumbling block.
I don't think anyone...
I think,
yes,
one thing that we need to realize is if we have to look at the budget that was allocated to urban and rural development, does not even speak to how we are going to construct those houses. I think the Urban and Rural Development Ministry is one of the ministry that actually get least funded. So if we want to resolve the housing backlog in the country, or if we want to construct housing in our country, how are we going to attain that if we do not give them the necessary funding for them to bring about the construction of houses? So that is one thing that we need to look at as well.
I agree. The budget, for me, that is exactly my issue. The budget that Minister Shafuda has tabled and the promises that are made, are being made, they're not speaking to each other. You can't give me $10 and say, no, I'm going to buy 10 loaves of bread when you know that bread already costs more than $10. It doesn't speak to each other. That's why I get frustrated, because, and then I look like I do not appreciate my country, but I get frustrated because it's like they are talking to kids. We are adults. There has to be truth in the pronouncements of government. This is a government of the people. The one thing that I appreciate about this government so far is really that the government, that the president decided to park the increment of old age pension and shift more funds towards people like yourselves.
Yes, youth development.
That is really, really commendable. But to go back to the original subject, the NQA, the Namibia Qualifications Authority, has 69 tertiary institutions on its database, 69. So when we talk about UNAM and NAST and the IUM and VTC and whatnot, there are 60 more colleges in which Namibian citizens are enrolled and who will be saying, I'm also a citizen of this country and I need free funding. So, because people are just, the views are just around, how is UNAM going to deal with this? No, Chimpamba, what is that thing that... Chicago also will have the same question.
Yeah.
So, for me, I appreciate free education. Truly, truly. My daughter is about to go to university and she'll benefit greatly from that. As a parent, I can shift my resources, my meager resources, to something else. But that must happen really with patience and with time. The president doesn't have to finish everything in 5 years. It's not possible.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Toivo. You are speaking sense. But when you are speaking about free tertiary education or free education, it's not a party where you just take your bag and wake up and go. There will always be requirements. Even to enter university or institution of higher learning, you don't just pack your bags from your house, you go. There will always be requirements and say, you must have these particular points in admission letter, and this institution where you ought to get funded must be registered with the National Council of Higher Education, accredited by NQA or NTA. There will always be procedures in terms of how we are doing. Other than that, people will use that as an opportunity to loot resources. People will just go in Okalongo, open up a college and say, I've registered 50 students, I want funding. So due process, of course, will be followed. So it's a similar process how NASFA was operating. You must get admission from an accredited institution. They are registered with Namibian Qualification Framework, National Council of Higher Education, they recognize. So when you say free, it's not just like that. So it's even the same for this free basic education. You have to go to Emmanuel Chifidi and say, I qualify to go into grade. You don't just come from the informal system and sneak into the class and say it's free, I must attend. So there will be processes and procedure that will be followed. So I'm very much confident in terms of those pronouncements. We have a very competent team, even with the reshuffling of the technocrats, the EDs. They are so much positioned and aligned, and I think we are going to deliver. And a lot of people are going to be shocked and surprised.
I really want to be shocked, because it will be a good shock.
Yes.
For me, like I've written in my editorial time and again, we have to rally behind the president.
Very good.
Because she is the president of our country, and her success means the success for all of us. Her failure also just equally the same.
Yeah.
So there's a sense of excitement about what can be done, but we have to be realistic. The universities, my fear, Duminga, as we about to close this conversation, my fear is that funding, as we have seen with schools now, your primary schools and secondary schools, schools are told, no, it's free education, we will take care of it. Now the funds are not reaching schools. When there's a pipe leak at the school doesn't have the funds. The schools are in a state of decay now because funds are taking long to arrive, if they arrive at all. My fear is for that to also happen to our universities. UNAM, my alma mater, just one morning you are told, no, the university, the employees cannot be paid because the funding is not coming through.
Okay, Toivo, while you are there,
and all these kind of things.
Yeah, while you are there, I want to just give you a good scenario.
Because Swap wants to hold on to power, then
no.
they're not
Let me give
delivering
you
the resources.
A good scenario while we are there.
Yeah.
You know there is IUM.
Yes.
You have Tramford College and you have Walwicha. Those are the biggest private universities that
Yes.
we have. Those guys, they're expanding in terms of their numbers and building infrastructure in various regions.
Yeah.
Those guys depend on tuition fee from students.
Yes.
They don't get government subsidy, but they survive. They survive in terms of running their affairs, their operations, and also manage to expand. Take IUM, for example.
But UNAM will have the registration fee will be scrapped now.
No, that's what I'm
from
saying.
UNAM. It will be scrapped.
But I'm saying that.
And from the private
Now,
universities.
take an institution like Tramford, Walwicha, IUM that solely depend on tuition fee that they get from students to expand and run operation, and take NAST that receive 500 million and tuition fee on top of that. Take UNAM that receive $1 billion and tuition fee on top of that. And you are saying they'll struggle to run the operation. How do this private institution manage to expand and run operation with money that only come from tuition fee from students?
She wants to respond.
Simon, UNAM has one of the university with the largest amount of students.
Yes.
They have run about 24,000 students at the main campus or so.
Yes.
You can't compare in terms of numbers UNAM to IUM.
The more number you have, the more money you have from students.
But majority of the students at UNAM solely rely on NASFA funding.
And
then now, private...
they rely on what?
No, most of the private universities, they fund themselves. Most of the students there.
No, but they also have NASFA.
Look at Walwicha. Majority of them, majority of students at the Walwicha University are private students. They fund their own.
It's incorrect.
It is.
No, majority of our students in general are funded by NASFA. I was giving you the figure from last year. NASFA funds over 47,000 students. Yeah. If you take out the figure for UNAM, you take, now those are the three biggest universities. You take UNAM, NAST, and IUM. Those are the biggest. So they get a bigger chunk. When you are saying we have allocated 2 billion to NASFA, that is the money that goes to this university in terms of tuition fee and non-tuition fee funding to students. Now, what I was trying to demonstrate to you is to say that this institution receive money, 500 million, you receive 1 billion. And on top of that, these students still pay tuition fee from government. So these ones don't receive subsidy from government at all. They've not collapsed. They are able to operate within that. So sometimes it's also just financial prudence, efficiency, how you deal with your money. This institution have big land, for example. Take UNAM, you go to Orongo, they can produce and also engage into income generating activity. You go at NAST, they have a hotel school. So what I'm saying is that we also have to be financial prudent in terms of our expenditure. not just to get money from government and spend it on other things that are not a priority. So all what I'm trying to say is that with this subsidy that comes from government now, and it's going to be under the same portfolio of the Ministry of Education, you add it together, because tuition fees now going to be paid directly with the subsidy that goes to, the institutions are not going to collapse, but we just need institutions that are going to be financial prudent, and they're able to spend the money, that expenditure effectively.
Toys.
We've run out of time. We've run out of time, but through the last...
Yes. Our universities are already complaining that the subsidies that they get from government is not sufficient from them to run the university in terms of research, like I said, in terms of paying or increasing the salaries of their staff members. So with what Amunime is saying, it actually sort of delete the argument that he's trying to bring about. No. So this is why they are worried that with the implementation of free education, how are they going to run the operations of the university? How are they going to sort of develop the research component of it? We have a problem in our country. The research is just not coming forth. And this is why universities are actually worried that they're in a panic mode. And it's very important also perhaps with the pronouncement that the president should have also mandated the private sector to come on board and to support the initiative of free tertiary education. Perhaps that will help. Yeah.
We must conclude this conversation. The point that I didn't articulate very well at the beginning when I was talking about 69 tertiary institutions in the country, it was to say very few of those, very few of those qualify, have students who qualify to get NSFAF funding. If you go to some of these colleges, one of the major agitations of young people right now is to say, oh, because I school at this university or this college, why do I not qualify to be funded by NSFAF? With this pronouncement of the president, it means if I school at Oshikango or a small college in Kietmans, we have to be treated equally now. Government must now channel funds to all those 69 universities, all of them, in order for free tertiary education to apply to every Namibian student. Right now, it's easy, that's why I'm saying that people seem to confine it to UNAM and NAST and IUM only and whatnot, because we think those are the major recipients of NSFAF funding. And you think that, but now it means it must apply to everybody. And the funding, when you look at the budget of the minister that was tabled, when you look at what is being collected by NAMRA and everybody, it doesn't seem feasible. That's why I thought the timelines are just too short. But that was my last show. I have the last word. Thank you for coming, Simon.
So I'm not saying anything.
My director,
just saying, in conclusion.
First 30 seconds. 30
that's
seconds.
Basically it's just to say there will be requirements. There is nothing like free, you just walk in. Otherwise we are going...
No, you are admitted.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. If you are admitted, you are admitted based on the requirements that are set by the governing bodies that are there. It's NQ and National Council of Education. Otherwise, not just any mushrooming institution. People will use that just to loot. So as long as they meet the requirements and the requirements that are set, there will be no problem in terms of funding.
And someone will come up with a new university now.
Yes, as long as you meet the standards that are put there by the regulatory bodies that are put in place. Yes, then there will be no problem because you are recognized, you are accredited, you are registered.
Thank you, Simon, for coming through.
Thank you very much, Toivo.
Ndala, thank you.
Thank you so much.
He's shaking your hand.
I hope.
That is tonight's show with very exciting young people, Simon Amunime from Swapo Party and Duminga Ndala from the Endless People's Movement. Thank you for watching.